Kay.
Hello. How are you?
I'm so excited to tell you about this conversation with Kathryn Kolbert and Julie Kay. This is one of those that really got me revved up. Like, it got my juices flowing. After I got off with them, I was on a rampage for like hours, calling people, telling them everything. It really got me going. And I think our audience is really going to be interested in this one because it's so relevant. It's so timely. We are talking about our access to abortion in the United States. And clearly that's an issue that we're facing. We're kind of looking down the barrel of a potential end to that. And it's super real. So we're talking to two human rights attorneys that have dedicated their entire careers to this cause, and talking about the reality of what that means. Like, what is the history of the issue, but also what does it mean if we no longer have that kind of access anymore, which is mind-boggling to even consider.
It's honestly really, really hard for me to wrap my head around. I mean, it's not hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that that's a very likely outcome in the coming months. It's hard for me to imagine life without that freedom. Like, I think I grew up in a generation where I absolutely took a little bit for granted the fact that should I ever need or want access to an abortion, I was going to be able to find it. And it's pretty wild to think that might be changing really quickly.
Yeah, that's right. And something that I have disclosed on this podcast before is that, you know, although you and I have grown up in a generation where we've had that access, there have been many generations before us who did not have that access. And my great-grandmother was a victim of a botched abortion and she died, you know? So that kind of story that lasts for multiple generations, it's something that really lights a fire under me because no woman should ever have to be put in that position, ever. It's really just ludicrous to me. So I spoke with two real experts in this field. Kathryn Kolbert, or Kitty as she's called, is really one of the most influential public interest attorneys in the country. She has argued before the Supreme Court twice, most notably in 1992, where she made her second appearance, arguing Planned Parenthood v. Casey, which is a case that we will go into in our conversation, and is frankly widely credited for saving Roe v. Wade. And something that we need to know about. Like, that history is important. She has like a whole huge laundry list of a really robust career. She founded the Athena Center for Leadership at Barnard College. She co-founded the Center for Reproductive Rights. Like, she's been very active and she is a wealth of knowledge. And I also got to speak with Julie Kay, who is similarly a very passionate human rights attorney who actually came up through the Center for Reproductive Rights, in part under the mentorship of Kitty. And she's an expert on women's human rights domestically and internationally, where she led the landmark case ABC v. Ireland, another case that we'll talk about. It brings up some memories of the conversation we had with Alva Smith last season in Ireland, and argued before the Grand Chamber before something like 17 judges from all over Europe.
Spoiler alert, while pregnant. That's insane.
Right. How at the time, Ireland's ban on life-saving abortion was violating her client's human rights. So she successfully argued that case. Super interesting. And now they have gotten together to co-author the very timely and compelling book, Controlling Women: What We Must Do Now to Save Reproductive Freedom. It is a guide to what we have to do now. We can't just sit back. We can't just take it. It's time for action. It's time for letting our voices be heard loud and clear. And it's a really compelling read, so I highly recommend it.
I mean, these two women have done so much for so long to protect reproductive freedom for women. And yet, from what I'm hearing from you, they're more fired up than ever And it feels perhaps more critical than ever before that women and men for that matter, but that we step up, speak out, engage in this fight. What has shifted? What preview can you give us? What has shifted for them to make this feel so especially urgent right now?
We are, as Kitty says in our conversation, and actually something that she is known for saying, it's all about Sesame Street. It's all about learning to count. We are faced with a very conservative-leaning Supreme Court, and it's not just that the majority of them are conservative, it is that they are more conservative than they've ever been before. So we are now faced with the reality that the protective mechanism that we have had for 50 years will go away. And when that happens, at least a third, if not half, of the states in this country will flip a switch and abortion access will be gone. That is a reality that we are faced with, that we need to understand the vast repercussions of, the trickle-down effect of what that means for other freedoms for women and people and other minorities. And it's scary. It's not just abortion for abortion's sake. It is what the book explains. It's really about controlling women.
So I want to piggyback on that right now, Sabrina, because I do want to let our listeners know that for those of you interested in diving deeper into this topic, this conversation only scratches the surface. We are going to be rounding up a host of resources, articles, links, different perspectives on this issue, and dropping them in your inbox. So if you're interested in diving deeper, if today's conversation lights a fire in you the same way it has under Sabrina, please be sure to follow the link via Instagram, via our website, and make sure you sign up for that newsletter, because this is just the beginning. And as we'll hear, it sounds like the fight is on.
And take a listen. I am so excited to have this conversation with Julie and Kitty. Thank you both so much for joining. Kitty from Philadelphia and Julie from New York. Thank you for being with me.
We're thrilled to be here.
So just for some context for our audience, I actually had the pleasure of meeting Kitty and hearing her TED Talk in person in Palm Springs in December at the TED Women Conference. And I have to just say that I think it was like your first line into the talk, you said, Roe is going to be dead essentially within the year. And there was an audible gasp in the audience. And I couldn't hear anything after that. I was gutted. And for the entire day, I didn't know what to do with myself. And that really was the reason why I felt like I needed to have this conversation with you, because both of you have so much experience in this field. You have decades and landmark cases and Supreme Court and the European courts, and we're going to go into all of that. But I just wanted to give that context that this is kind of where we're starting the conversation, is we can no longer rely on Roe to save us. So I want to kind of go back to how this particular issue of reproductive rights law became so personal to both of you that it kind of drew you above everything else, away from, other legal issues, that this became the most important part of your careers. And Kitty, I'd like to start with you.
Well, thanks, Sabrina, and it's a thrill to be here. And I am glad to hear that was your reaction to the TED Talk, because, of course, that was my point.
Yes, I assumed so.
Most Americans don't get it, that we are going to lose Roe and we need to begin